Hi, everybody.
Good morning.
I'm Jason Muhleberry, and you might recognize me as the hand percussionist who's usually up there with the Joyful Noise Band. I'm hoping most of that was for the band itself. In 1992, I was lucky enough to spend 6 months traveling through Southeast Asia, mostly in Indonesia. I would be out in the areas where tourists don't normally go, and maybe hitchhiking down an empty highway, and I would often hear drumming in the distance. Well, I always followed the trails to find the drumming. Sometimes it was just people rehearsing or people playing around. Sometimes it was a party, a wedding, or a sacred holiday. The Indonesians were very warm and gracious, and they were always happy to see me on this land. And they would ask what I'm doing there, and I would pull out my little drum out of my backpack, and I'd say, well, I'm here to study your local music. So they figured I must be a pretty good person if I loved the same music that they loved. They always insisted that I meet with the elder drummers of the village, and those elder drummers were always happy to meet me, and always happy to show me their local rhythms. Now, here's the interesting part. These guys were these 60-year-old men who grew up in these tiny villages, and I was from a very different world. Yet we were able to sit down and create more than just camaraderie. Let me tell you a little bit about drumming with someone. The two of you are working hard to be 100% present with the other person's music, making the eye contact, watching their hands, and it's a pleasurable experience for both of you. And you might even shift your rhythm a little bit, you might speed up your tempo, and you are implicitly asking them, how does this feel? They hopefully smile back to you, and they might shift things around a little bit to you, for you, implicitly asking you, how do you like this? Does this process seem familiar? It's a kind of intimacy. So the question I'll be talking about today is, these guys came from such a different world. In 1992, most of these old men didn't have electricity in their homes until they were in their 40s. And I was this 22-year-old kid in Silicon Valley. The question is, how could they and I, from opposite ends of the human experience, create this instant intimacy just by something as simple as drumming? I'll be pointing out lots of different facets of science to explain why we are built like this. Now, back to the beginning. Archaeologists find, when they're digging through the ancient villages' ruins, they find that humans pretty much always developed music instruments at the same time that we developed tools. It's real consistent all over the planet. And so one theory behind this is that we needed a sense of rhythm so we could make good arrowheads and flints. Professors challenge their students when they're learning how to make arrowheads, go ahead and try it without rhythm, it can't be done. So the humans who did not have a sense of rhythm had trouble with their arrowheads, so they had trouble bringing food home. There's another theory about this that fits in beautifully with this, and I love this other theory, because the idea is that music was this enticement that lured people to come together and cooperate. It showed that if you could sit down with those strange people across the river and do something nice, and that then modeled behavior for cooperating for other stuff like hunting, building shelters. And so music helped us come together from the very beginning. And then there's a little bit from the world of anthropology. There's been a consensus for centuries, and I believe for millennia, that musicians and accomplished musicians in particular encounter a disproportionate number of opportunities to pass their genetic code on to future generations. And it's just science, just fun, simple science. So this music is still built into our bodies today. Doctors and researchers are finding a lot of different ways, wonderful impacts that rhythm has on our health. If I do a real quick list of benefits that have been in peer-reviewed journals, I'll just hit this real quick. Drumming increases brain white matter and executive cognitive function. It eases chronic pain. It improves socio-emotional disorders. It boosts your immune system. It retrains the brain after strokes and other neurological problems. Drumming has all sorts of effects that are just really good for us. Now, for this talk, I asked my fellow band members, the Joyful Noise band members, what do you get out of music and what do you hope to share with your music? And they all said pretty much the same thing, but in very different ways, of course. Dan Wright said, singing and playing with others is like a communion. It allows us to create something bigger than what we can do alone. Lisa Rosine talked about having a sense of belonging with other singers, even if she didn't know them personally. Jody Mathis says, when I'm singing, I send love out to the congregation, and I feel love coming back. That's what we're doing up there. And by the way, we love it when you guys sing along with us and dance with us. That brings a lot of joy to us. So let's go deeper. Let's look at consciousness itself. When I wonder where does our consciousness come from, I have kind of a nerdy approach to it, and I think, well, where does my energy come from? And it came from that hamburger I just ate, right? Well, that cow got her energy from the grass she ate, and that energy came from the sun. In fact, all of the energy in my body that I can measure came from the sun and its photons. I asked myself, what if these little photons are the building blocks of consciousness? They come down to the planet, they're absorbed by a fern, that fern grows a new branch. A deer eats that branch. A deer poops in the woods, and that poop has its chemical structures with energy built into it. The grass absorbs that energy, it is eaten by my cow, and it comes to me. So there I am, looking up at the stars, wondering how could I be connected to the stars and to life all around me? And I'm ignoring this cow that is sustaining my ability to think at all. So it's something I like to think about, how we are connected. Now, let's go, and light, by the way, as you know, is a wave as much as it is a particle. So maybe our consciousness is just another rhythm. Now, let's go big, really big. Imagine most of us know that the Big Bang is a theory that everything was jammed into one infinitesimally small point, and then it exploded and the universe unfurled for us. The question is, what happens next? Now, I've got to tell you, over the years, when I've been explaining these ideas to my friends, I half-jokingly call it my personal homemade religion. And it counts technically as a religion for a couple reasons. One, I call it that because it fits in beautifully with the teachings of Jesus, such as in the book of Matthew, when he says, let me make sure I get this quote right. When he says, go and sell what you own and give the money to the destitute, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come back and follow me. So there he's clearly saying that we need a bond with that other out there, even if that other person is from a different social class and destitute. That bond we can feel with them is more important than everything we own. And when we are drumming, we can feel that bond in our heart. So I believe drumming and music is doing God's work.
Amen.
Thank you. So a more nerdy reason that this counts as a religion is it technically has a couple of points of faith. First point, let's talk about how everything is built. At the core of every particle and every force, like gravity and stuff, at the core of everything, according to the most comprehensive theory explaining all the stuff, is at the core of everything is a little vibrating string of energy. It's called superstring theory. Now, I'm not crazy about using the word string because if I put a string on the podium, I can clearly see it has length. And if I look closely, I can see height and I can see width. Well, these strings at the base of everything, they don't have height or width. They only have length, one dimension. So it is just pure energy. It is pure vibration. It's nothing more than a rhythm floating in space, relating to the other rhythms around it, creating the nucleus of our atoms, creating every molecule. everything we know is that. So I say I have an element of faith. I have to admit, traditional physicists say this isn't real physics because it's only mathematics. Everything's too small for us to experiment with. I find poignancy in the fact that our most consistent ideas to combine everything are improvable. You know, they're unknowable, but it's gorgeous and it works. Now, the question about the Big Bang, what happens next after the Big Bang? That's another point of faith for me. Right now, the scientists, they keep changing their mind, but they are saying, well, it seems to expand into forever nothingness until it's all a gray, boring soup. That idea feels boring and soupy to me. I like the other idea. How about everything in the universe comes back together again? There's enough gravity so we all come back together into that tiny little point. Every galaxy, every planet, every living creature, maybe every thought you've ever had becomes unified once again. Then what happens next? Bang! Another Big Bang. And the universe unfurls again. What if the creation and the destruction and the renewal of the entire universe is just a series of Big Bangs? What if everything you've ever known and ever thought is just part of a giant rhythm? Those are the kinds of inspirations that keep you drumming and remind me that it's a powerful thing and it's a way to bond with a lot of folks that I've learned to love over the years. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, I hope you're asking now, when do we get to drum? I'm sure a bunch of you were asking that. And now is the time. I'd like to ask you to stand if you're willing and able. I'm going to lead you in a traditional rhythm. It comes from Nigeria originally, and then it, of course, spread around the world because it's a good one. And many of you might know it from when Carlos Santana used it for his song Jingo. In Nigeria, it's called Jingo Loba, and you'll hopefully recognize Jingo. So it's real simple. You clap once, and you stomp your feet twice. It's like, and trust us, when you keep doing that longer and study more, it just becomes more joyful. Thanks a lot.